Cheep, cheep, cheep. Cheep, cheep, cheep.
So much I itch. Gnarly. But nausea is not a hindrance. Because you're Sam and you're serious. Yeah, expect to see that gag a couple times in the game. The human empire is threatened by mental and his alien forces. And Sam, the totally awesome warrior of humanity, gets sent back in time to fight them. Back when they were busy with their ancient aliens phase. Fight them in ancient Egypt, Mayan Philadelphia, Persepolis, as well as medieval Poland, which gets represented in a stereotypically Transylvanian fashion. Story-wise, the game doesn't have much. Some optional text describing your objectives as well as enemies and weapons. Maybe a gag or two. It's not the main draw, and there's so little of it, it's not really any draw. But hey, that's to be expected. This game is essentially a skill-based shooter, but with a lot more room than Quake has, and this level of story is a lot for the genre. Visually, I believe it's pretty good. It's a pretty old game, but I believe it's been remastered a bit. The interior walls especially look great. Just look at that ornate detail. Disclaimer though, I'm not an archaeologist, so I don't know if any of this is correct. But still, pretty walls, and they threw in some dark atmospheric spookiness for good measure. So the interiors and buildings hold up surprisingly well. Perhaps a bit empty, but that's where the things you kill go. And not all of the walls are that great, but you can still appreciate it. Any natural terrain, however, looks quite bad. Quite barren, with inclines being especially bad. Now this is empty. To add to the problem, the game does focus a lot on outdoor areas and open arenas, sometimes with very few obstacles or decorations, to act as distractions. And sometimes those open arenas have seemingly no edge to the map. Just nothingness. But in all fairness, this issue is nowhere near as pronounced when it comes to sand. I suppose it's a lot easier to make something look like sand than grass. So on to the draw. The gameplay. It's great. A first-person shooter that prioritizes strategic patterns of movement and dodging rather than what usually is prioritized in skill-based shooters, speed and split-second reactions. Different types of enemy come at you and you know how to deal with them best, as well as what distance and weapon is appropriate. What enemies can you leave for now, and what enemies do you have to deal with immediately. The rest is a bullet ballet. Or perhaps more appropriately, a weapon waltz. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. I don't know if that's the right timing. Also important in this game are basic math skills, so that you make the most out of your health, armor, and ammo pickups. But don't worry too much, if you run out of ammo you can just use your infinite ammo Colts. They're not that powerful, but as long as you dodge all the damage, you can use them to deal with a great many things. You know, with a lot more effort than you otherwise would have to. In my opinion, this game holds your attention for longer periods of time than others in the genre. Duke Nukem 3D, Ultimate Doom, and Quake 1 all take around the same amount of time to complete their campaigns. And while I did enjoy those games immensely, after that amount of time it gets a bit tiresome. And thus I left out the final bonus chapters of Ultimate Doom and Duke Nukem 3D. Just shooting without story distraction. Or any other distractions, really. Yet Serious Sam Classics Revolution is a remaster of 2 games. The first encounter and the second encounter. And I completed both those games in succession. With little fatigue. That took me about 36 hours. Maybe deduct an hour. I was experimenting and trying to get the split screen to work. For couch co-op, it's a bit of a faff to set up the controllers at times. And I struggled to test it remote play. Wave after wave, arena after arena, running segment after running segment. Aliens, all posing different threats attacking. Most of whom were absurd to some extent, add to that a few boss battles as well as mild platforming, and even a moment or two that could be considered very mild puzzling, and you get a game that's at the very least slightly more interactive than others in the genre. Maybe an awkward phase between skill-based shooters and your more modern FPS, and in what I assume is another attempt to distinguish themselves, they decided to go full on weird. at least in terms of enemy design, as well as with their trump card, secrets. Even though you usually only get ammo, health and armor from these secrets, it's still a pleasant jolt when you find them. And in the second encounter especially, you get rewarded with some beautifully ridiculous japery. Lovely, and there are a lot of them. I believe this was fairly late into the second one. As you can see, I'm not doing that well in terms of secrets, but I'm doling out some decent killing. The secrets cement the game's uniqueness. Your arsenal is made up of pretty much what you'd expect. Shotguns, machine guns, rocket launcher, energy weapon. Kind of established standards, but fun to use. But there is one big, glorious exception, and it's perhaps one of the more absurd weapons you'll find in a video game. Crow Team's answer to Doom's BFG, perhaps. An arm-held cannon that fires massive cannonballs. A literal hand cannon. Cannonballs that are, I'm pretty sure, bigger than Sam himself. Cannonballs that can steamroll over weaker enemies. The game definitely has personality. I mean, if it wasn't executed so well, you'd probably assume that all of these things were just thrown together. Hey, perhaps they were, and it resulted in this brilliant thing. You go back in time to fight a bunch of different aliens, most of whom look completely different, and the first ones you fight against, I believe, are technically zombies. And just look at Serious Sam himself. It's not hard to believe the possibility that he's the result of one of the development team's members playing around. And someone was like, maybe we can use him. And the rest might be history. Let's finish things off with what I believe to be the best part of this game. It's a first-person shooter on PC that can play split-screen co-op and versus mode. And it's controller flexible. You know, after you faff around with it a bit. When was the last time you saw all of these factors combine? Except for the unfortunately timed, yet beautiful recent additions made to Quake 1. Trust me when I tell you, there are very few foundations as good as this for a playdate. And creating memories. Unforgettable. It's absolute punishment. Launchpads and laughter. It is cheap on Steam. 109 Rand full price, 21 Rand 80 on sale. That's 61 cents per hour of gameplay, which is sublime. And except for that one testing hour, that's without multiplayer shenanigans. Or survival mode. Or the included DLC. So the game has content for days. And it does have an okay size on the hard drive. At 1762 megabytes. Not the hardest, but not the easiest download. It's okay. And the game does work on the Warhorse. And stereotypically, I'd say it's kid-friendly. Except for the blood and the purple-loving zombies, but some kids would be able to handle someone holding their own head. The game has great gameplay, maybe technically repetitive, but I was engrossed regardless. Kind of like practicing a dance routine. It has good visuals, good buildings, and good darkness. But also, they have aged. Especially the natural textures. And it has a great, weird personality, but in all fairness, that personality was a bit more lacking in the first encounter. Probably because the secrets were less creative. There was less wackiness. And I suppose not everyone will like the weirdness. Not everyone likes a hodgepodge. On the maybe side, the game has no story. It does, but it really doesn't. And on the con side, I'm gonna give the emptiness of the arenas its own point. Because sometimes it can feel like a empty void. A reflection of Sam's empty soul. And having to murder millions of aliens. And not even see one human being to save. Desperately trying to capture some joy with the weird Easter eggs you find. And a joke name. Never look down, Sam. You'll see your reflection in that brilliant ice. This game has some of the prettiest reflective ice I've ever seen in a video game. Come on, play it. If all that wasn't enough to convince you, play it to experience a game that takes secrets so seriously that technically it has 2 other weapons, but I simply failed to find them. I only know they exist because I got ammo for them. Now that's hardcore.
Choip, choip, choip. Choip, choip, choip.